All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Neary Building Committee for December 16th, 2024. It is 7:02 p.m. We have 4 of our 7 voting members present to start. I think we'll have a few more joining us as we go here along tonight. First item of business is approval of meeting minutes from the December 5th, 2024 meeting. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? Any comments or questions? All right. I will make a motion to approve the December 5th meeting minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Mark,
Aye.
Roger,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and I am I as well. So that's a 4-0 vote. Next item is I just sent them before the meeting, so I realized they were not in the folder, is the August 9th meeting minutes. If you could just look at the yellow paragraph at some point during the meeting, I'll come back to that before we close out this evening. It's basically 3 sentences. Next is community feedback and outreach plan. So this is a standing agenda item that we have. The communication subcommittee has been meeting after each of our meetings on a pretty regular basis now, and will continue to do so tonight. The main objective of what we're going to accomplish tonight is around the why of the project and making sure that we have some better messaging around that before even jumping into some of the project details. Other action items that we are close to resolving and or scheduling are a film series with Sam. I think Greg and I are going to have our first session this week. We're going to do it in small topics based on the frequently asked questions. There may be topics that we will call on some of you to help us to record at certain points in time during the process as well. Topics such as the landfill, Mark Davis looking at you, and Andrew, either you, Kathy, or Mark from the finance subcommittee when we get to the cost of the project as well. So we'll keep everyone abreast on some of those items. The other thing is we are in the final stages of scheduling some open office hours starting in January. The committee decided to avoid December, just given the rush leading up to the holidays, and specific user group meetings as well, in terms of different public and private entities that have differing interests in the project, to make sure that we are providing them the information that they feel like they need. Any questions or comments on that particular piece? Okay. Next is going to be a probably pretty decent presentation. We'll chunk it up from ScanScan Arrow Street. First, an update on the design review. Then we'll move into the exterior of the building and site circulation. And then we'll pause and come back to the Finn School. So with that, I will give Jim and Katie access. And the floor is yours to take us everywhere but Finn at this point, I would say.
Jim, do you want me to jump in with the design update, or did you have anything to leave?
Sure. Nope. No, included in the materials was a budget update, but there was no big changes there. So yeah, you can take it away.
Okay. Here we go. Share. So I'm actually going to change the order slightly. It's all a design update, but let me just adjust my screen. Here we go. I'm going to start with the site and work in. So what you're seeing here is the site plan created by our landscape architects. This is the plan as presented. We met with the design committee on Thursday last week at the school. And the next slide is showing a series of comments because we had a really good, lively discussion about this plan and some feedback. A couple of highlights for this. The plan as presented was showing a new entry drive location. We understand now that the soccer field is owned by the town and is not something that we should be changing, that it has been updated relatively recently, that we do not want to do anything to it. We thought it was still worth a discussion. Sometimes communities decide that for whatever reasons they want to change that, but we understand that is not the desire here. So we are going to relocate the road as shown in the red arrow at the bottom. We understand that there is a desire to have some parking near this field, that people will often use this after hours. So we are going to be looking at how to get a little parking into an updated plan. We also are including some informal play space adjacent to the gymnasium. So where we had been suggesting a field, it would just be a slightly smaller zone, likely grass, something that the students could flow out of the gym and play on in a very informal, no equipment or anything like that, but just a lawn area. The plan as we had presented it also showed coming in here and having the buses drop off in a loop that circled the parking. But from the conversation that we had with the administration, it sounds like it would be, in fact, better to flip that so that the cars would come in, that the parent drop off would be here. We would have, provides a long alley, this whole drive for queuing cars. And they could have a rolling drop off. It allows the students to get out on the right side of the car, out of the passenger side, and then the cars could loop around. It also allows parents to be able to park if they needed to go into the school. So it seems like a good flip that way. So what that would mean is that the buses would then come to this loop in front of the school. This graphic shows the correct number of buses, so you can imagine if they were queuing up, they would be able to fill this whole loop. We're going to extend the sidewalk so that it comes all the way around, so that basically the buses could all line up in the loop and the students could get off from whatever bus they're on and walk back this way and into the front door of the school. This also allows for the smaller van shuttles. We were told that they could pull up at the same time and come into what is effectively the guest parking. We're going to look at some head-in parking spaces. We understand that that is desirable for the students that are getting off. They might need a little more time or a little assistance. So pulling these vans into the guest parking area. We had also shown an emergency access drive around the back of the building. We understand that that is something that the school would like to keep for maintaining access to emergency vehicles all the way around the school. We had talked about having some sort of gate or something to prevent cars going back there at times during the school day and basically controlling the access around the back of the building. Another thought would be that we could, overflow parking seems to be very important, especially when there are events at Trottier. It sounds like there are often spillover into Neary, and it in fact fills the Neary parking lot. So we're looking at places that we could have some overflow parking. One concept could be to have them park on this access road. It would be wide enough for an emergency vehicle, which would then provide that you could have one lane of parking and one lane that you could drive in a single direction past that and around. We had talked about an informal play space adjacent to the classroom wing, and we are going to keep that as something very informal, like a lawn, again, that kids could spill out, but not having the main play space that close to the building. It will be maintained relatively close to where it is now, with this emergency access drive coming through, again, single direction, only for emergency vehicles. Then going inside the building. So plan updates, we've been meeting with the district on a bi-weekly basis. We've had some really great conversations about adjacencies. We've started really filling out the spaces where before there might have just been one block of space. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. For example, we are now showing more information about the back of house space. I had a wonderful conversation with Keith talking about how that would be the best function of that and the arrangement of spaces. So back to this site plan, you would see the deliveries would come in on the right-hand side of the building. This also keeps it out of the flow of traffic of buses or cars for drop-off. So back of house spaces are shown in a little bit more detail. We heard in the meeting this past Thursday, and as observed in a building tour that we had done of another school, that we're going to keep the music room. The 3 music rooms will be at the same level as the stage. This makes it really easy for moving instruments and things back and forth to the stage. And it also, in the arrangement that we're working on as the next refinement of this, you will have direct access to the stage. So you could use it effectively as sort of a green room for performances. We have also shown more information about the layout of the administrative offices. This rotated slightly on the plan in order to create a more generous entryway and entry plaza at the main entry to the school. We are showing the nurse's office here. This was a desirable location for its access to the gym. We understand, obviously, that the nurse probably has a lot of need to be next to the gym, and also access to the administration. That's often something that people want with a pass-through door to the administrative area, as well as having easy access to the side entry in case of any need to have a student picked up during the day. And then we had a conversation about some single-use student toilets being located near the gang bathroom. There are multiple reasons for this. Sometimes it is a bit overwhelming for certain students to be in the large bathroom. Maybe they need a little bit more oversight. We have factored this into our plumbing count, but effectively we have a single-use student toilet located at the entry to each of the group bathrooms, of which there are 4 around the building. And then update on the gym. What we have shown here, the court is 42 feet by 74. That's the standard size for an elementary or middle school gym. We're showing bleachers, 4 rows of bleachers, which would accommodate about 225 people. We also have in gray some cross-court practice courts. And then going to the second floor, probably an interesting thing of note, we have moved most of the mechanical spaces, mechanical and electrical, to the second floor. We had extensive conversations with our consultants. They are fine with this. The only thing that is necessary to be on the first floor is the sprinkler room that has to be accessed from the grade and from the exterior. What this allowed us to do was to compress the footprint even more. We had a lot of spaces that really needed to be on the first floor. These spaces can be on the second floor. I talked about this also with Keith, and I didn't hear any resounding reasons not to do it. So I think that's a good change for reducing our footprint a bit. Also, you're seeing here, we have some staff toilets sprinkled around. We talked about how to put these in strategic locations so that whatever floor you're on, you're either going up or going over. So on the second floor, we have one here. I'll go back to the first floor and show you the location of those. And then we have also as part of this conversation, and Greg, you may want to chime in at this point and talk about, we have included a second art room. Do you want to give some background on that?
Sure. So we have looked at our potential scheduling closely. And although we could operate with a single art room, I think it's more feasible to have 2 art rooms, because most likely we'll have 2 art teachers. This allows some space in terms of scheduling a school of this size.
Thank you. Just going quickly back to the first floor, the other staff toilet, the other pairs I was talking about are located at this end of the wing. As I said, this way, depending on where you are in the building, you can either go across to one or you can go up the stairs. We feel like they're a good even distribution. And then skipping back to the exterior, we had a conversation about exterior materials. It is our feeling, and we had a discussion about this with the educators. The exterior materials, we're looking at masonry. There are a lot of different colors, sizes, styles, textures. But the reason for this, it really is a very durable material. It has good longevity. We're designing for a 50-year building. And it is also very cost effective. It is probably the most cost effective at this point, exterior material. Here you see a few examples of some of our inspirational images at this point. These are not, obviously not our building, but you'll see that you can have, this is what we're planning for, is largely a masonry building. Maybe it's 85% masonry. I'm not sure the exact number at this point, but for the sake of our estimate, we'll have largely masonry and then some other materials that add a little bit of interest. So in this case, it's a composite metal. In this instance, we're showing a Trespa type material, but likely something like composite metal. It also comes in a huge variety of colors. We're showing a few images here with the courtyard inspiration, as far as having a glazed courtyard entry on the lowest floor, looking out into that courtyard and beyond to the natural landscape. And here you'll see an image of the massing of the building as it currently stands, and calling out where some of these entries and inspiration might be used. So that is high level the design. Jason, do you want to take questions?
Yeah, I think before we go to questions, are there any, other than just some general input, are there any requests of your group tonight for, decisions, guidance? Like,
Yeah, we want to make sure that that everyone is on board with a few of these decisions that we've made, especially related to we were going to ask about the additional toilets. We have since clarified with our code consultant that right now we are meeting the code, and I think we have one extra toilet, so it isn't really a question of anything additional at this point. We want to make sure that you're okay with the gym design as we have shown it. We would like to make sure that masonry, just in general, is acceptable to the building committee. I think those are the main, and the site plan, that there aren't any concerns, that we can proceed, at least for the sake of our estimate.
all right, so for purposes of directing the conversation, I'll just have you stay here for a second. We'll go back to the site plan after, and then we'll go forward to the masonry. So on this, first item of discussion is around the art room. So it sounds like that is potentially incremental square footage.
That's right. It's an additional room of 1,000 square feet.
Okay,
That wasn't reflected in the past square footage, the space summary.
and is that MSBA reimbursable or not, or to be determined?
It is reimbursable. It was allowed in the initial plan, but from the conversations, it sounded like at that point that it wasn't desired to have. Greg and his team have now looked at staffing it and scheduling it and feel that it is necessary. So it is part of the MSBA reimbursable.
Okay, so it asks for comments on that, Kathy?
So we just added $750,000 or so to the cost by doing that.
Jim, do you have the calculation? I have, it is 1,000 square feet before any net gross.
So that's 1,500 square feet, Kathy, with the gross up factor at 1,000 square foot, so 1.5 mil.
Times, Jim, keep going, do the math for us.
Yeah. So then, yeah, I mean, it's an additional $921,000. That's, and then you tack on, 20% for soft cost. So yeah, I think that's in the ballpark between 1.25 is about where it will be.
Okay, so what is Southborough's share of the expected additional cost for adding the art room?
So if it's deemed reimbursable, and from what Katie just said it is, that would be, our effective rate right now is at 28%. So the district would be, let me just do the quick math.
Oh,
yeah.
25%. So we got
Yeah.
3.7 million too,
Yeah.
Okay.
So if,
$900,000.
yeah.
And we did this because of why again?
So Kathy, part of the design work was looking closely at schedules and making sure that programmatically we had the space to meet the program. So originally we thought one art room would suffice, but after further conversation and discussion, it was determined that 2 art rooms are necessary.
Because Greg, I'm hoping that the cost goes down between what we determined last, which was $81.4 million as far as our bond, and when the MSBA actually votes, this is going the other way.
Correct.
Do we think we're done with these changes at this point, as far as this type of thing that actually increases square footage?
Well, could we review all of them? I mean, Kathy, I don't know if you caught it before you joined, but gymnasium's bigger.
Well, hang on. I didn't hear it's bigger. We'll get to
It
the
is
gym
not,
in a
it is
second.
not bigger.
It's the same size. They were able to accomplish the goal, but we'll come back to that.
So do we have a new space summary?
I did not update it for this, but I know that the room itself is 1,000 square feet, so I could, it was 89,000, so now it's 90,000 and some change. I could provide an updated space summary. I just don't have it tonight.
And do you need a decision on this tonight, or can we wait for the space summary and decide in January?
As long as I'm trying to remember the date of our NBC meeting in January, we're sending information to the estimator on January 16th. So I would just need to have the information by then.
Which would just be an up down on whether we should add this space or continue with the space that we had already submitted.
That's correct.
And this is the only incremental square footage that we're going to be asked to consider before that new estimate.
That's the only request I've heard.
So,
yes.
Greg, is there any more due diligence on your team's side that you feel like needs
No,
to be
we've
done?
gone through this with a fine-tooth comb and looked at office spaces, classroom spaces, instructional spaces. The art room was really the only incremental addition.
If we don't do it, then I'll go to Roger. You potentially would have some art classes on a cart in the classroom. Is that what would happen if we didn't change this around? Assuming the building's at full capacity otherwise.
Correct.
Okay, Roger?
So where would this go? I'm looking at the diagram right in front of me here. Is there a way to,
That is here.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mark?
What was there before? Is this brand new space?
We've been pushing and pulling, the adjacencies and all of that. So things have moved around. So there wasn't really there before. The art room itself was in this general location. We just paired it up with another.
I guess let me ask it this way. Has the exterior of the building changed to accommodate the art room?
Mm-hmm. But we've been changing the exterior of the building for many reasons, looking at how the spaces fit, trying to keep the net to gross. Actually, we were required to keep the net to gross below the threshold. So, you know, sometimes we have to pull things in. We're shifting spaces around. The exterior has been changing with it. So if
Well,
we
then-
needed to take it out, we would modify the exterior again.
Then I guess let me ask it the other way. Is there anything that we took space away from?
No.
No, okay. All right.
Katie, what is our square footage of the project at this point? And you said 89. I thought it was 99,564.
I'm sorry, I was going from memory. If I can stop sharing for a moment, I can pull
Yeah.
up the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I have it up.
You have it. Okay,
It's
great.
99,564. That's right.
So just to be clear, say it one more time, we have not changed that 99,564 at all, except for what we're talking about tonight, possibly doing with the art room. The gymnasium that we talked about last meeting, right now is still where it was with the 564.
Correct.
Okay.
And we're still at a 150 grossing.
We're currently at 1.5, yes, as we're pushing and pulling. We all know that we will continue to try and refine that and narrow it down as much as possible. Currently, we're tracking right about 1.5. I just realized one of the things about the mechanical room that I intended to mention. This mechanical room is sized as if we had a geothermal system. That mechanical room is larger than it would be with the air source system. That comes out of the net to gross, so that's not changing the size of the building. But what it means is that we're having to take space somewhere else out of the gross, whether it's narrower corridors, just making things extremely efficient. So it is not actually adding space. It's part of the net to gross. But if we decide with the life cycle cost analysis that you want to go with the air source system, we can recoup a little bit of that space out of mechanical and distribute it, or make the building less than 1.5. It could come into that grossing factor. But currently, until we know that, we need to hold the size that would be required for the geothermal system.
Okay, so at this point, Katie, and I know you're just, you know, I'm asking something you don't know for sure. Do you believe the 1.5 is going to come down at the end of the day or not?
I believe it will at the end of the day. It's at this stage, while we're pushing and pulling on things, we don't have structure shown, we don't have shafts. So we are trying to not give away the space that we haven't worked out the size of things yet. It is always our goal to make it as efficient as possible.
So will you know what the final grossing factor is when you're at the end of schematic, or is it even later that you truly will know what
It
that
will be later.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that we continue to do. As I said, we have structural, we have mechanical, that the actual routings that we'll need to figure out. And those are the things that help us fine tune that number. So we'll continue to chip away at it as best as possible.
And I just plugged the numbers in. So overall, it's actually a little less. It's about 1.1 million increase to the total project cost. And an increase of 750,000 to the town share.
It's with the other additional toilets and everything, we're staying in the same square footage, but is there any additional estimated cost for that versus whatever other space the square footage would have been used, or are we still kind of in the same ballpark?
It's still in the same ballpark, and frankly, we have one additional toilet. It's not excessive, yeah, and that's because of these single toilets where it's hard to put them where they belong and not just have one more.
So just to make sure we're all on the same page, Jim, are we still looking at Southborough's share of the cost at 81.8 million? Has that number changed?
So yeah, it would be 81.8. Yes. Yep.
Before we consider doing this, okay.
But we're gonna go through a new cost estimation process
Mhm.
in January, February timeframe, right? So Let's just say
Yeah.
we don't add the art room for 2 seconds. We could still have a change to the 81.8 based on design features that you've included and or changing market conditions, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, that number for projection will definitely shift around. And something like this too, I mean, we can look at what the
I'm doing 24 hours. I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page for tomorrow night. It's 81.8 as far as what we know tonight, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Jason, the reason, I know there's other things that could increase. If we do the geothermal, we're still gonna have to finance all of it up front and hope we get the reimbursement from the government 2 or 3 years down the road. So that's gonna increase that bond also. So I understand all that, but right now, nothing's changed, that 81.8 number, and that's what Jim said, so that's all I wanted to make sure of. So I'm just trusting and verifying.
Okay, so no decision on the art room tonight. We'll come ready to make it in January. I think the committee would benefit from a space needs summary. I would ask if committee members have questions on the educational benefit that they reach out to Greg or Stephanie between now and then. If there's anything additional they would like them to bring or have discussed with the educators that would be using the space.
So just to clarify, because oddly enough, because I'm just doing the 3011 here on the fly, when we got the additional 586, the additional 586 for the cost per square foot, and then the site work increase, the town share actually came down to 81.1. When I plug this in for the additional 1,000 square foot for the art room, it's 81.8. So we're basically just making up kind of what we saved for that for that 586 adjustment in funding.
Jen,
So
slide you sent me a week and a half ago, 2 weeks before, the art room says 81.8. So that's the slide. That's why I said you sent it to make sure I had the right slide. So you say 81.8 on that slide, and that's what you showed us.
okay, all right, I'll clarify that.
Okay, quickly, like before tomorrow night. So we're all on the same page as far as what we think Southborough's bond is going to be. We
Yeah.
know it's going to change, but we at least have to have a number right now that we're working with.
Yep.
Roger, do you have a question on the art room?
Really quickly about the art room. So the way you've just explained, the way you have just explained it, Jim, before the art room and the 586, whenever the reduction was there, it was 81.8. You changed something around, which dropped it to 81.1, but the art room has put it back up to 81.8. So that's really why it's the same number. There was a decrease and an increase. It just happens to come out to the same number that we already had. Is that fair?
Yeah, I need to spend a bit of time.
I've
with this.
oversimplified it, but okay.
Yeah, but yeah, essentially from what I'm seeing right now. But yeah, I'll clarify that.
Okay, but this has got to stop tonight, guys. This whole project depends on mostly the cost. There's concerns with the site. There's a couple other minor concerns, but it's really the cost. So we can't have what just happened happen again. Jim, I've got your slide. It says 81.8. I don't know what dropped it to 81.1, but I haven't seen that slide, and I'm on the finance subcommittee. So if it did, we should have seen it. And then your math doesn't work again. We didn't say we're going to go up $700,000 for the art room. We said we're going to go up $900,000. So that should have been exactly $82 million. So we've really got to get this right and be exact and have numbers, because the minute you start doing this, it's here, you're going to generate distrust. So we've really got to have the numbers that we think they are, and we've got to stick with them. We will adjust them as we need to, but we've got to do that together, and not one person knows one thing and another person doesn't know it that should know it. So you've got to get us tonight from 81.8 to 81.1. That's the first thing you've got to do before tomorrow. And then if it is 81.8 back with the art center, you got to explain that, because that's not the math we just did.
Yeah,
So-
let me spend some time with it, and I'll get the number.
So, and I think we need to leave the art off to the side. That was a case of first impression for everyone tonight. No one, and we all could have done back of the envelope math, but stick with the known factors that we've agreed to and submitted to the MSBA for purposes tomorrow night. The committee decides to make a change in January at the recommendation of the school administration, then it's on us to justify why we would make a change. All right, so in the gym, so just to make sure everyone's on the same page, Jim, or Katie, this is probably, I'm talking about the gym, GYM, and I'm talking to Jim, JIM, and Katie. You listened to the feedback at the last meeting about what the community was looking at. You went back and you feel like within the originally allocated space, depending on, based on how you lay it out, you will be able to get bleachers that accommodate greater than 200 people and have 2 smaller courts on top of 1 larger court, so that there would be the ability to use this for elementary school age children from both a small age, call it kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade, to obviously the older group that would use a full court without increasing the square footage of what is allowed by the MSBA and what we have currently carried,
That is
i.e.
correct.
accomplishing what everyone wanted.
That is correct. The court is a middle school / elementary school size, 42 by 74. The cross courts will not be regulation size, but they can be practice court size. They're shown here in a gray line. I'm showing them where the bleachers would be pulled in. That's what is able to achieve that. So we're assuming that you're using the bleachers fully fully extended only for large events in the main court. The bleachers will still be there, but you can't pull them out all the way on a practice day. And the size remains as it was designed.
Greg, has your physical education group weighed in on this? And this space is going to be appropriate, I assume, for purposes of conducting 1 or 2 PE classes at the same time?
Yes, and I think we've discussed having a center curtain so that the gym could be used as 2 spaces if needed. So yes, we have discussed and sought input from the PE educators.
Okay, so there are questions from the committee on this? Kathy?
So my memory may be wrong, but I thought when we talked about this last meeting, that the concern was not the needs during the school day, but it was the ability to allow the various leagues, et cetera, to use this court after hours and on weekends. We wanted to provide more space to allow the town to have more room than we currently have. I thought that the needs of the school itself were already met with what we had in place last meeting. And that the request to increase the size by 2,000 or so square feet was to accommodate the outside groups that need space also after school and on weekends.
You are correct with that, but remember the requests that came to us through the public forums were an ability for people to sit in more practice space that could be divided along the way, as well as a full-size court. So essentially, right, and we can take it back to the user groups that had originally submitted it in our open forums, but to me, you are providing a full-size court for these groups to use for games with bleachers in 2 practice courts. You have none of that right now at Neary, because you can't use that space off hours, just it's not conducive to really doing anything outside of just conducting PE classes. So I think you are adding space to allow them to use. Just my 2 cents, hearing the requests that have come in at the open forum and what our consultants are now telling us.
So good, right?
Yeah, I'm sure if we ask, they're going to want larger, but I think there's a delicate balance we all need to strike here. All right. So that was the gym. I think we answered questions on the plumbing fixture. There's
Mhm.
nothing else in this, correct?
Nothing else within the school. The last thing was proceeding with masonry as our basis of design for the purpose of the cost estimate. So what we were describing is roughly, I'm just going to off the cuff say 85% masonry and 15% some other material such as composite metal. Similar to this inset image, it gives it a little bit of a relief on the exterior. We would use that in focused areas, probably at the entries, something along those lines.
Any thoughts to the contrary on that particular piece?
Is there any desire to make it look like Trottier from a campus perspective, or does it really, Greg, does it not really matter to you? I'm indifferent, but
From my design expertise, that there's not really a line of sight to the two. So I think it would be nice that there's some individuality with the two buildings. But just having the common masonry, you know, again, two masonry buildings might be the connection.
Kathy?
So Katie, this is not my area, as far as the choices here. Are you asking for guidance tonight as far as what to pick here? And are you recommending one that you believe is cost effective and that's why you're recommending this?
These are precedent images just to give you an idea of the fact that there are many different types of masonry, colors, patterns, those sort of thing that we can continue to explore. We simply want to make sure that the committee is okay with masonry as a concept. There are other materials out there that we could choose, but we feel that for the reasons of cost effectiveness and durability, it is also notable that there is, you know, that most of your schools are masonry, so it is very common as far as a campus feel, that sort of a thing. So we just would like to have the nod that it is okay to proceed with masonry for the sake of our cost estimate.
What else would you use?
You can see this image is a material called Trespa. That is it's a different sort of compressed and formed, you know, man-made material. You could use terracotta. That's very expensive. Again, for durability and for cost, we feel that this is your best bet.
All right, I'm seeing no additional hands on that topic. I think we should go back to the site plan for a second, Katie.
Okay. Do you want the one with the comments or without?
Yeah, that's fine for now. So, DePietri Field is what we call that field right out front. At least in the diagram, I realize you caveated, you've learned some more about it through your meetings. But your intention was to flip the field to create better access, but then you've now learned that that's a relatively new field. It's currently being utilized. My question, this actually came up when the schools were in front of Capitol on their capital plan, is does the way that you orient this change the usability of that field during construction? Right, so that field is not used by the schools that I'm aware of during the school day, but it is heavily used for youth sports on the weekend. So when recreation was in front of Capitol, they talked about a strong desire to keep this field open during construction, albeit realizing that they're going to be a construction zone, you know, not very far from it. Does the way that you orient this field impact the usability during that 2-year timeframe? Again, I don't think this is a gating issue, but it's a question that came up that I felt like it was important to resolve now, especially given the potential changes. I realize you may be backtracking a little bit.
I believe we could, the field would not be affected. This will come up in the phasing with the contractor, but it would be fenced off so that the field itself would be usable throughout the duration. We should have a conversation with the contractor about the parking. I know that there is a small lot on this side of the street. I'm not sure if that's enough parking. But this side of the street isn't going to be affected at all, so that would be maintained. And then if that's not enough parking, we would discuss with the contractors, leaving some portion of the parking lot that is here until the end. They could, phase it such that some of that parking remained during the construction, if that's what's desired.
Where is, can you point to DePietri Field on this? Right
This field here.
Could you add some to the left of where that little, kind of where that, in between those 4 trees where the driveway comes in on the drawing now? Like, so
Well, I think we
we're
wouldn't
coming
necessarily
down the dotted line just after the field to the left.
over here.
Yeah.
That is currently backing into the wetlands. I think
Yeah.
you also don't want to build any more parking. We would just preserve some that is already there, not tear it up until the last phase of the project. Mostly you don't want to spend any money building a parking lot that is only temporary. That would be my recommendation at any rate.
What
There is existing parking.
point to the parking that you're going to keep?
What part of the parking you're going to keep? Is that what you asked?
Yeah.
We could put a construction fence and strike a line so that at least while the demolition, while the early phases of the whole removal of the existing school, that there could be some portion of that parking that they literally just fence off to maintain it for the fields. At some point, it would have to go away so that the new road could be built. But there could be some period of time where you could maintain some of that parking that's currently there if the parking that's across the street was not enough.
Yeah, and I'll say, being that we're going the same risk route, if this is known right out of the gate that this field needs to be used, that we would just plan the logistics around it. I don't think it's a big ask. We're not on a super tight site like a urban site. There's plenty of laydown area for them. So I don't think this is a huge ask, and is definitely something that we can pre-plan for as we work through the logistics with the CM.
Okay. Oh, well, I'm gonna go to Mark, then I have another question. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Greg, does Neary utilize this field in any way?
Yes, during PE class, the field is used at times, but I would imagine again, if we're off site for during the construction phase, it really would be irrelevant in regards to the school use. But when school is in session, when we're on the site, the field is used.
All right. This field, to me, raises the issue of the landfill and how close the darn thing is. And I have sat there and watched it being used. And if you miss a goal, the ball rolls right up into the wetlands on the south side. And that's the location of the one well where the water table is at the surface, and there's stuff there. So I've always been concerned about this field, and I raised the concerns that relocation would be far better. Yes, it's in great shape. Yes, it's well maintained. Yes, it's utilized, but it's in the wrong location. And to me, I would prefer moving everything as far from that wetland as we possibly can. I think there's exposure there today in utilizing it. And Greg, thank you, because I knew Neary used it because I've sat there in the parking lot, watched them cross the parking lot to get out to that field. I had hoped this field would somehow be relocated. There's standing water right at the where you're putting the new driveway. That's where the standing puddle is. That's the low point in the entire site. I'm concerned. And I was hoping that Neary wouldn't use it, but either this thing has to be really fenced off so that you don't go into the wetlands looking for an errant soccer ball. But we really need to think about the location of this field.
Okay, so I'm still confused. What's the name of the field where we had the two outdoor town meetings?
I don't think it has a name.
Okay, so that's not,
Call it the soccer, the young grade soccer field.
okay, so is this one next to the tennis court?
Across the
Yeah.
street.
This is closer to the tennis court and to landfill, as Mark noted, that we're talking about right now.
Okay.
Katie, can you zoom out for a second? Kathy, where you're talking about is on the right side here where.
Over
Kate-
there.
In
Okay,
here.
sorry.
Yeah.
This is, I know it's an idiotic question, but I'm so confused where this is. Okay, now I got it.
So Mark, appreciate your concern on that. So I think what you're saying is you obviously have concerns with the existing location.
Yep.
But does the orientation here that they're moving away from, are you still concerned about that because of its relative proximity?
Well, here, if the field's going to, if the field's going to remain, we really need to sit down with our consulting engineer pair and determine whether there are any controls that we can put in place to keep people out of the wetlands. Because that's the exposure of the entire site, is that little spot there. And that's where the groundwater surges out of the soil. So we've got standing groundwater in that wetlands. So if we can come up with some engineering controls to keep the field a field and keep people from going beyond the boundaries of that field, I'm less concerned with it. But it's an exposure I'm not completely comfortable. I was hoping that was going to be the location of our detention basins. I see them there. They've now got to be moved. So I have some concerns with it.
So you want the whole field moved permanently, Mark?
I would prefer not to see that field never should have been built there. In my own opinion, now that I really understand this site, yeah, I'm less concerned with it with what we just saw on the plans, that the proposed relocation closer to the school, because all of those conditions disappear. And the roadway serves as a really good barrier to getting into those wetlands. I want to keep people out of those wetlands, period. Because that's the exposure.
So where would you move the field?
Right where that red oblong circle is. There.
Suggesting to do what we had sketched.
Yeah, that made me happy. There's a road between it and the wetlands. You put a fence along the road and we've gotten rid of the exposure. Theoretically, it's going to be a couple feet higher than it was to flatten it out. We've eliminated an exposure that's been there that's concerning.
Okay.
And the detention basins are correctly placed, which in themselves make a barrier.
Is this
I
cost
like this site plan.
reimbursable? Is this cost reimbursable? Not that that's the gating issue, but I know that question's coming at some point. If we were to move the field and the school uses it, how does that work?
There's a, go ahead, Jim, you know it best.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it all plays into the site cap. So we have our percentage cap for site work, so it would just get into that mix. So if we're increasing that, we'd have to see how the estimate lays out, but we could be increasing our overage of what that site cap reimbursement is. It'd be hard to say right now without the estimate.
All right, so I think we should memorialize Mark's comments and have a thought process around which way you decide to proceed. on this, right? And there's some pros and cons, right? As we've noted throughout the discussion. With that, let's shift a little bit to the Fin discussion. So one of the things that I think we have referenced at multiple points in time is if we were to build a 4-grade school as part of this process, that it would certainly negate a future school project at the Finn school when that comes due in, call it a 5 to 10 year time frame. So one of the things that we've asked the consultant team here to do is just to outline what items, through their observation, and I caution that it was just a general walkthrough. They weren't even engaged to really do this, but just give some ideas of what would be needed in how quickly it would be needed. I think as we go through this, I think there's two important distinctions. Which of these items would be needed to just maintain the building? So if we just were to use this for any sort of municipal purpose other than a school, which of these things are just going to have to be done to keep it habitable and functioning for the whatever use we decide to repurpose it on, versus what is required of a school? And I think one of the things that we've learned through the Neary process is there's certainly things that we would have had to do from a base repair perspective just to bring the building up to code compliance. But then there's the added part that is not as easily quantifiable in terms of how the educators deliver education to the students in here. I think where I would like to land after this discussion is making sure that there's general agreement on any presentations that are made from here on out of the items that we would have to do to Fin, regardless of its use, because that should be part of kind of our overall capital planning. And then what are the incremental items that would be needed for it to be maintained as a school into the future? I think we've spent a lot of time talking about the efficiencies of a 4-grade versus a 2-grade, not only from an operational perspective, but a cost perspective at this point in time. And we all know kind of the cost, time value of money, and what we've seen with other municipal projects recently. So Katie, maybe if you could just walk through, some of your independent observations, and then we'll open it up to the committee for discussions and commentary.
Okay. What you're seeing here on the screen is effectively sort of a timeline of the building, starting with when it was constructed and then significant repairs that were done in the year 2000. That's when the kindergarten and gym additions were constructed. There was some window replacement. The roof was replaced, exterior doors, new kitchen equipment, and air handlers. And then more recently, boilers were replaced, a new rooftop mechanical unit at the administrative area, and some flooring that was replaced. So the most critical need that we see as in our preliminary walkthrough of this building really come down to the roof, which, as you notice, is now 24, almost 25 years old. And we understand has significant problems, continuous leaks. It could be either restoration, so repair, or a replacement. I believe Keith has more information on that if we want to circle back on that. And then the second item of a critical nature is the moisture that is coming through the floor slab. This has caused, it appears to be wicking into the walls. It's unclear without further investigation if all of it is coming up through the floor or if it's coming through the roof. But there is definitely a moisture problem in the slab that's causing the flooring to become, let's see, it's coming up at the edges. The adhesive is seeping out through the edges of the tiles. So that obviously is creating a problem, creating mold, creating bad air condition, requiring the window units that were installed this year to help combat the air quality. Those would have to be done no matter what you were using the building for, I would imagine. If you tip over the line, the threshold of a substantial renovation, which would be about 30% of the assessed value of the building, you would have to do these things, including accessibility upgrades. That would be things like the bathrooms where you might not have the turning radiuses that you need, grab bars, door clearances, as far as, fire extinguisher cabinets and things that are mounted at the correct heights. It would also have to do upgrades to the exterior of the building. You'll probably remember when we talked about Neary, what the new energy code involves as far as the insulation of the envelope. So that's the exterior walls, the roof. That would trigger all of those repairs as well. And then if you were going to use it for a school, obviously there would be some additional finishes and things of that nature, clock system, electrical upgrades, updates to finishes and lighting, things of that nature. Repair and clean the exterior masonry. I think that would be applicable if you were going to be using it as a school. And then some repairs to the paving and the sidewalks, and things like that. So it's quite a laundry list of items. I think the roof and the moisture in the slab are the most critical of those. I also have some photographs. This was included in our PSR report to the MSBA that was sent out with the package, but there are a series of photos. I feel like this page tells the story quite well as far as the roof leaks. You're seeing here the curling of the floor tile from the moisture coming up. These are the doors that were actually replaced in 2000, but because of that same moisture, it's rusting out the frames. So there are a series of photos here for understanding the condition of how it is right now.
Katie, are you going to be able to take this list and separate it between those that apply to the building regardless of whether it's a school versus, and then those that would apply only if it were to stay open as a school? Put a number beside those and a year beside those so that we know what would have to be spent on Finn for the term of the bond, and it's probably going to have to be a 30-year bond. So we're really looking at it, trying to get to a 30-year projection of what it would cost to maintain this building one way or the other.
That is not something that we are doing as part of this project. It's not part of the scope. Finn was not even listed in the SOI. So what we've done here is more meant to be, an overarching summary. We don't have dollar values necessarily to associate with any of these things either. That's just wasn't part of our scope for this project.
Let me ask Kathy's question slightly different. So you said roof, which I can tell you that schools has provided capital with a number for the roofs based on
Yes.
like a full assessment of that. So we know that. And
Mhm.
you're saying moisture,
Yes.
which I realize is like chasing something. So how would you encourage or direct us to try to get an understanding of what that could mean for the school in the short term? Because at least if we follow your professional recommendation, you're saying there are two things that are definitely.
I think the way I would suggest to reverse engineer the cost, basically, it's really about tripping over that threshold of 30% of the value. I don't know off the top of my head what the estimated value of the building is, but if you found that value and took 30% of that, you already know what the roof costs. The extent of the moisture, I would suggest you'd have someone who could provide a cost estimate for performing that work, which would be removing the floor finishes as they are, applying some sort of topical treatment that would keep the moisture out, so a moisture barrier on the top of the slab, and understanding the extent of that. I understand that it starts in one corner. Here, this diagram, it starts roughly in where the circle is at the right and extends. It sort of it tapers off and dissipates by the time you get to this portion of the building. So somebody could take that area and tell you what it would cost to remove the flooring, apply a topical treatment, and compare that cost to the 30% threshold, and that would tell you whether or not it would be viable. It would tell you what investment you'd have to put in before you'd have to do all the additional upgrades.
The assessed value right now is 25 million, so 30%, 7.5 million.
And depending on which of the roof options, Keith, do you want to talk about the cost that you were given for the two different repair or replace options?
See Greg's hand up too, so I'll let them.
Yeah, can I just make a comment on the flooring at Finn and the vapor barrier? So when the renovation, there was not the proper vapor barrier installed on the flooring. So we do have cost estimates to replace the flooring and put the proper vapor barrier. So that is a known issue that we have been getting cost estimates around, so we can provide that to you, Jason.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. And Keith, do you want to speak to the roofing costs that you've generated that I know is in the town's capital plan, regardless of what we use Finn for?
Can't hear you, Keith.
I was gonna say he's off mute. We can see your mouth moving. Can't hear you. Let me see if I can find what you sent to capital. Hold on. Unless Greg, you have it handy.
Greg, while we're waiting for that, if it's needed to be done in the next 2, 3, 4 years, right? And we're not decommissioning Finn probably prior to that, could we do accelerated repair with the MSBA, or would they not necessarily look favorably upon that?
So flooring wouldn't be eligible for
Flooring.
accelerated repair. The roof.
Would be.
I don't think they would accept an application to the accelerated repair program because they kind of know the context of the larger project.
And the numbers that I have from Keith that he submitted to capital are to do a restoration option, which would have to be done in the next 24 months before the window closes for restoration as a viable option is $2.1 million with a warranty of 20 years. The replacement option is 4.2 million, which is a 30-year watertight warranty with a 40-year watertight warranty as well. I'd have to presume that would cost more than the quoted option. So you're looking at 2.1 if you do it in the short term to get 20 years, or 4.2 to do it and get a longer term warranty. So doesn't sound like that would, just using the basic math that was outlined, the roof itself will not trip any sort of other building code requirements. Greg, is your hand still up or are you still? All right, it's down. So other comments or questions?
Can we go back to Katie's list?
Mhm.
So is it obvious from this what is needing to be done if it's a school versus not? I know some things are obvious, but is the whole thing obvious?
It's not sorted with that in mind. things like the finishes wouldn't need to be done. I would imagine that if you were, some of these I think are really are at your discretion. If it's not tripping the threshold, you're using the building right now, so it's not that it is unusable. Things like the accessibility upgrades really are tripped by the threshold. So I believe what I'm hearing from the folks who know the building the best is that the roof and the moisture are the things that you would need to fix in order to make it usable for the long term. The roof, I understand, needs to be done within the next 2 years. So it's either 2 years for the restoration or within 4 years if you were choosing to replace it.
And I don't know, Greg, if I'm putting you on the spot from an educational perspective, and how you think about delivering education and the targeted audience that building specifically has in terms of the younger age group. Is there anything that just from a pure educational delivery that wouldn't be necessarily even covered from a building perspective that would be, naturally something that the district would be looking for if we were going to be maintaining this building into the future?
No, I think that the roof and the vapor barrier are the two priorities, I think, in terms of its current use as an early childhood center. I don't think there'd be any additions in the future, but I would just share that the overall footprint of the building isn't necessarily conducive to an early childhood center.
So Greg, just to be clear on what you just said, if we were to close Finn as a school, except for pre-K, let pre-K stay there.
Yep.
Saying that you believe that the only two things that would have to be done in the short and long term on that building would be the roof and the moisture problem?
Correct. So the roof, the flooring, are the two kind of significant, and then eventually, you'll have, you have windows, if you're talking about the duration of that building, but normal replacement cycles. But in terms of educational space, there would be no need to add any additional space to meet the educational programming needs of, whether it's pre-K.
Greg, would there be any option to keep Northborough PK there, or once they move out, they're kind of not coming back?
No, I think there would, that would be ideal. Again, to keep Northborough pre-K located in partnership with the Southborough pre-K. Again, there's a lot of economies of scale and sharing of resources. Ideally, that is something we would like to do. So could be an option.
And Northborough still does not pay rent to use Finn, correct?
Correct.
If the core part of the building was constructed in 65, we're trying to go out 30 years from 24 or even 28, that's 58. That means the core part of the building would be 93 years old with what we're talking about. So I guess I'm having a little trouble buying that all we need to do is the roof and fix the moisture problem.
So Katie, go back to the floor plan, just to make sure we're all talking about what the core part of the building is for a second, because I think that's a good point, Kathy. The red, correct me if I'm wrong, the red is what was added on back in 2000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But the remainder of the building, Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, was updated. So windows,
Yep.
flooring, in all most aspects, kind of the building was modernized during that 1998 renovation.
But if you were to, I'm just trying to expand on Kathy's comment. So if a 4-grade school were to fail and we had to maintain this building for the
Mhm.
foreseeable future for pre-K, K, and 1, its exact current use. You're telling me that you wouldn't be coming back to the town for a major renovation here, other than the roof or the ancillary equipment in 3-year time frame? And I realize that's well beyond your time as superintendent, but
Mhm.
just trying, I mean, what we're trying to do is think ahead and make sure that the town is aware of the impact, right, to the capital plan on both a yes and a no vote. We all know what the yes vote means in terms of the cost to the town if we stick with the numbers we already have. I think the bigger unknown is that if it's a no, what has to be done to maintain it as a school, and how does that differ than if the town were to kind of cherry pick off pieces of this building to occupy as is versus customize? And I realize we're not the customization fact, but I think that's what I think we're trying to get to or better articulate.
So would there be a recommendation for some type of renovation project if it remains as a school in the next 15 to 25 years? And although I don't have a crystal ball, I would imagine that there would be a recommendation within that time frame.
I don't think this committee is planning on coming up with an alternative for the, at the special town meeting.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that people there won't be asking why you can't just keep Woodward and Finn and close Neary and expand Finn and Woodward. I imagine that's gonna get asked by someone at some point. But I don't think it's necessarily our job to come up with that
Mhm.
cost. But we still gotta talk about it.
Yeah.
We already talked about it, and we certainly, I think, and I think some of us, maybe all of us agree that if the vote that we're gonna get asked, what's gonna happen to Finn if the project does get approved and the Finn gets close to school? So we're looking for that answer. And that's not this committee's job to answer either, but we do believe that as part of the presentation that question has got to be ready to be answered by someone.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, in looking at this floor plan, Greg is correct. What was added in 98 was what's circled in red. And the building itself was laid out and worked just as it did in 1965, but everything was upgraded. I mean, it was all, flooring was redone, the walls were all refinished, the ceilings were refinished, new lighting. Essentially, we looked at Finn when it was done in 2000 as just like Woodward, it was a refurbished new school. Are the existing components that are holding that building up going to be 93 years old at some point? Yeah, but I'm not sure that that's a huge issue. At some point, the town's going to have to look at the septic system because we're nearing that 30-year, and I don't even know if it was replaced in 98 or whether it was moved or expanded. But we also, that whole parking lot was relayed out. There was an old house there that was torn down, and we did a lot of work to incorporate all the fields. So, I mean, there was extensive work done, and we all viewed Finn as being really the new school. In order to get from the school out to the fields, you had to walk down a little gravel hill and you were behind somebody's house. And then you got to the fields. So there was a lot done, and I'm sorry to say the playground that I helped and a whole bunch of Finn parents helped all got torn out before it was taken care of. But Yeah, it'll be an old inner building. But there's no reason to believe that, just this structure couldn't continue to operate. It's the moisture, and I would even go so far as for the moisture, we really ought to be looking at the perimeter of the building and putting in some intercepts to kind of get that moisture away from the building. And pull it away, and that might alleviate quite a bit of the problem too. Um, but I hadn't looked at this floor plan in years, and now I know how the old layout was.
Any other comments on this particular piece? All
No.
right.
I've got as many questions as I had. I think it's still kind of a jumble as far as what to do here.
Well, I think, Kathy, I agree, there's certainly questions. I think part of obviously what I know you're working through and others in terms of, how could it be reused? I think depending upon how it's decided to be reused really is going to be an important question here, right? In the level of modification, short-term and long-term, to accommodate any user group, I think is really important. And I think to the extent there's significant modifications, I think it totally changes the discussion. I think if there's very light renovation or no renovation other than the roof and the moisture, I think it becomes a little clearer. All right, shall we go on to preparing for tomorrow night? So, Kathy, please interrupt me as we go through this, but I think there's two parts to how the Neary portion of the presentation is going to go. Part one is related specifically to the landfill. And you have Bill Cundiff and Tim from PAR coming on that, is that correct?
Correct.
And that's going to go first.
Yes.
Okay. So unless someone disagrees, I would advocate that Mark be kind of our spokesperson on that particular topic as it comes up, as it relates to this project. I firmly believe he studied this issue. He was clearly very skeptical of the issue for many, many months, and I think it's important for whether there's public comment on the issue or however you're deciding to conduct this. I think it's important for Mark to kind of run point on this unless anyone disagrees.
So we're going to start with that part, Mark.
Okay,
Tim and Bill will be there at 7. We'll start with that part. And the purpose of it is there has been a lot of public comment on, as you saw on site. And now it's spreading to the point people are going, well, wait a minute, are my kids safe right now? So we want to stay focused, but the point of the whole discussion is to hopefully alleviate some of the concerns and make sure that whoever listens understands what's been done to look at the landfill again. What's been done all along to protect the current school from the landfill, and what other measures are going to be taken with the new project.
So then part two is I put in our packet for discussion tonight. This is a presentation that has been given to a few community groups at this point. I know when I delivered it, it was in conjunction with the school administration to one of the SOS groups. It was actually the combined SOS group. And I thought it was a good framework to start our conversation. I think there's a lot of slides in here, and I kept it all in here, but I'll make some proposals here as we go through. I think this kind of summarizes the project in a nutshell from three different things. One, to have folks understand how long this has been going on in the process to date. Two is something that I believe is very commonly lost in the discussions around the landfill and the cost is, what are we actually gaining for the students that will be in this building from an educational perspective. And obviously that's best articulated by our school administration. And obviously you can't put a monetary value on that, but I think that is an important part of why we're proposing a project here to date, and certainly has been highlighted multiple times by the MSBA as they continue to move us through the process. And then I think there's a cost discussion, right? So I would, working backwards, suggest that members of the finance committee lead the finance discussion in terms of what the cost is, what does it mean? I would have the school administration lead the discussion around the educational benefits. There's a ton of slides in here around the design. I would encourage that we pull most of those from this deck. That can be a future iteration, but I do think it's important to probably tease out a few aspects of it, particularly around the community learning aspects. And I think there's just the process part, which I'm happy to cover. So I'm happy to go slide by slide. I'm happy to iterate here, but really welcome comments from the committee. It will be an open public meeting, so really anyone is welcome to chime in, but I do think there needs to be a sense of organization.
Okay, so we start with site, then we go to finance, then we go to the educational benefits of the proposed new school. And then Jason, you take over as far as the process, which I assume includes the MSBA process, timeline, etc.
Well, the way I have it laid out right now is we would do site. I have no slides for that. So if anyone thinks there needs to be slides or discussion around that, I have nothing prepared. So Kathy, what's your expectation? Go ahead, Katie.
I was going to say I could offer that the slide that we created that have all the different site constraints on it. I think it really tells the story about the extent of the wetlands, where the existing septic fields are, things along those lines. I'm happy to provide that to you.
It shows the wells.
It shows the monitoring wells.
Yeah.
It does.
Yep.
So we want to, we're going to walk a fine line tomorrow night. We want to try to explain to some skeptics that will be there tomorrow night what has been done, the extensive work that has been done to get us to where we are right now, because some of these skeptics don't understand that piece of it. I don't want to get into the weeds so much that we just lose people when we show, really busy diagrams, all kinds of stuff. I really do want to focus on the landfill, because that's where you're hearing the public comment right now, is the landfill itself. So as far as getting into where the septic is and I don't know that we need to do that. Jason, tell me if you agree or disagree. As far as that piece of it goes, I really think focusing on the landfill itself is where we need to hone in tomorrow night, and then the project itself, especially the cost and the educational benefits of the project.
Yeah, so maybe Katie, if we take that slide and just show the impact related to the landfill. And
I had done a specific portion of the initial presentation that was only the landfill part. I can send you those slides. It doesn't include all of the visual chatter of the other aspects.
okay. All right, so let's do that. Then Kathy, I would propose we go into process first, second, I guess that would be. And then go into the benefits and then close with the cost.
Okay, that sounds.
If we lead with the cost, we all know where that's going to go. And then I think the closing couple of slides we have in here are really around the impact of a no vote, right? Like I think people need to understand that our MSBA window is limited, right? We've waited a long time to be in this window, and if we miss the window, we're going to be whatever we decide to do, even if it's a base repair down the road, right? We'll have limited options, and we just need to continue to educate the community on that as well.
And don't you want to make the point, Jason, that we almost are starting all over if it's a no vote? Forget the fact we could call another vote within 80 days. I'm not sure that's necessarily important to emphasize tomorrow night, but that if there is a no vote, whether it's, one or two no votes, or the ballot is no, that we really are back to the drawing board. And that means we are years away from probably getting this resolved.
Yeah, and on our own, unless we decide to wait another 5 years through the MSBA process, which is why I think if I start there, like with where this all started with the school enrollment studies, it hopefully will remind people of how long we've been talking about this project.
What are you gonna say if someone says, great that you did the 2 school enrollment, studies, but you only went out to 2030?
So I think one, we have data back to 2000, which is the last time the town made important decisions based on enrollment data. And we made all those decisions based on, I'll call it the peak of South Grove school enrollment. We've now seen multiple generational type items happen, namely COVID, right, with a huge change in our housing stock. I realize we are on the precipice of potentially another one with now our adoption of MBTA communities. But we have designed the project in such a way that there is room for expansion at a later point in time. We also know and have learned through this process that Woodward actually has the ability to be expanded, albeit tight. So we know we have processes in place to allow for future expansion, but we're building based on what we know today and not building for contingency of 10 different scenarios down the road.
Okay.
Go with that. Mark, is your hand up at some point on that while I was
Yeah,
talking?
Katie, on the landfill plan, can you just make sure it goes far enough back to show where Neary School is in relationship to it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Jason, can you poll everyone to see who's actually physically coming tomorrow night? We're setting it up so there's a big long table at the front that everybody's gonna be able to sit at. I just wanna make sure we've got enough chairs, so I'd like to understand who is physically gonna be there.
So you'll be there. Andrew, you'll be there for advisory. I saw Mark's hand go up. Roger, you're gonna be there?
Yes,
Denise, his hand's up. I'll be there. School administration, I'll get to the consultants in a second. School administration, I saw Greg's hand go up. Becky and Keith. Anyone else from your team? You're on mute, Greg.
Stephanie.
Okay. So I know Chris Evers will not be there, so I think you've got 6 out of your 7 voting members, Kathy. Albeit 2 of you sit on other committees. I assume you'll take into account Mark, Brian, and anyone from the town side.
Yep.
You got 4 administration members. And then Katie, I saw your hand go up. Is Larry coming?
Larry is coming and Kate Babrisky.
All right. So you got 3 Arrow Street, and
Mhm.
then Jim, how many from your team?
It'll just be me tomorrow.
All right, so 1 Skanska. Got all that? Got a long enough table?
Almost.
I'm sure we can plug and play as we need to, realizing the limitations of that room. So
Kathy, is it too late to move it to Trotter?
It is. You can't change your location within 48 hours, so it is. And plus, of course, recording stuff's all set up, so we'll be fine. Mr. Purple supposedly is on this meeting someplace.
he's here.
I guess I'm gonna test if he's actually listening. So we already talked about how to set it up, so it will be ready.
It'll be all set, Kathy.
And thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
We could use some bleachers. We use
Right.
it-
All right. Other comments in the presentation? All right. So Kathy, I'll look to you to kind of direct and pull people in based on this conversation tonight, as you go through the meeting. And obviously, I think we have a lot of information to share. It's a matter of how we do it succinctly, staying on task and not obviously going down any one rabbit hole too much.
I agree.
Roger, is the school committee coming tomorrow night, or is that gonna be a separate discussion? I don't know if you or Greg can speak to that.
the school committee's posting, has posted it for a meeting. I don't know how many will be there, but I think we will have at least a quorum there. I'm pretty sure Chelsea will be there. I think Kamali will be there, and I think either Laura or Alan will be there, so we'll be there. Now, I don't
Okay.
know if we need, I don't know, I mean, again, are you asking, because of the long table capacity issue, or just, who's gonna be there?
Well, I'm making it for awareness for Kathy's sake, right, and Mark's sake for preparedness. And also I think you have a Zoom component to this too, right? At least for them. I don't know, because joining is, so you have a posted meeting. I think that's all that's relevant because we'll have to
Yeah.
have some organize it at the beginning.
We do.
The other part that I believe we are going to start doing, Kathy, and this is related to school committee, but I would ask that you and Andrew think about this with your select board and advisory hats on, is we are going to have a regular cadence at their public meetings from now until the project vote. With a, some sort of formal update as well, just to make sure that the full committee is present. I know we did this with public safety too, right? There was regular updates. So one request I would have for each of you to pull your members on after tomorrow night is how frequently they want us in and what they want us to cover on a regular basis so that they feel like they are informed and can help get the message out with true facts.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna go to public comment then. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay, meeting schedule. I know we spoke about obviously tomorrow night at length. Jim, can you give us a preview of what we're looking at for January and February?
Sure. I'll just share my screen there. Okay, so yeah, so after the holiday, we have on the 6th, we'll have our last meeting before the information goes to the estimators. And then that's just a waiting period for that. And then February, we have this one on the 7th, and I believe, Katie, was this when the estimates came back?
Yeah, the estimates
yeah,
are coming
that's
back
right.
on the 3rd, then we'll reconcile that week and report it back on the 7th.
Yeah, so we're putting that there for now as an earmark. We can talk about maybe if it's the 10th, but we just need a couple of days for the estimate. And then the SD submittal goes in on the 17th. So a quick turnaround, but we will have a lot of information from the estimates on the 7th. So
I don't know if we can meet on the 17th.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that that's a public holiday, so you're gonna have to back that up.
okay, that's fine. Yeah.
Well, you could, I mean, it's school, so theoretically, we need to give you how many days' notice so that you can do meet your deadline on the 25th?
So we would need, I would always like to, I think the 20th would be about the latest that we could go. To be able to get everything together, voted. So yeah, I think I'd be,
Full vacation week.
That was where I was gonna go next. So I think
oh yeah,
in an ideal world, if we can pull that meeting on the 17th forward into later in the week of the 10th here, that's
Yeah.
probably ideal for most. Again, we can pencil some dates in and try to hold to them.
Yep.
I would also suggest that I think when we had a cost estimate last time, it worked really well where the finance subcommittee spent a very detailed amount of time with you. And obviously we posted it as a full meeting for those to participate, but finance subcommittee was really running the meeting. I would encourage you to do that as soon as schedules allow, once you have the cost estimate, so that then once we come to a full Neary presentation, where I imagine our public input on that evening would be far greater than what we see on a normal night like tonight, that we're well prepared with, succinct executive summary, not obviously very detailed questions like I know will naturally come out of that process.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if they're coming back on the 3rd, we have a reconciliation the 4th or 5th, finance subcommittee on the 6th, and then review with the full committee on the 7th. But yeah, we can play around with that, but at least pencil that in for now. So
Okay, hold on, go back. When are okay, there's two estimates coming, right? One from Stansco, one from the original estimator, correct?
correct. Yep.
So go back to
So
the calendar.
so the January, so everything goes to the estimators on the 13th.
Okay,
And then it comes back from the estimators, both estimators, on the 3rd. On the 4th or 5th, we have to dial that date in. The two estimates get reconciled. And then we'll have one clean estimate for presenting to the finance subcommittee as Jason suggested, and then meeting with the full committee on the 7th.
all right, that's tight.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't want to just see it at the meeting. Like we're gonna need some time
yeah,
to do.
we need to look at it and think about it.
Yeah.
Meet on the 6th. So why can't we push the NBC meeting to the week of the 10th? Does that not work? And let the finance
Yeah.
subcommittee meet on
Yeah.
the 7th?
That works as well. We're trying to stay away from this date, but if this date's going to shift around to, we just want to, it's just trying to leave enough time in between items. But to Andrew's point, that is a tight turnaround. So if we were to move this NBC to the 10th, give everybody, a couple of days with the estimate to be able to look at it, I think that makes sense.
The
As
only,
long, I mean, it's still tight, but you're saying that on the 5th, we will have the reconciled estimates. Someone's going to look at the two and reconcile the two on the 5th, right? By the 5th, by the end of the day on the 5th.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
give it to us on the 5th. So we'll have starting the night of the 5th and the 6th to be ready for the 7th.
For the finance meeting.
Yeah. So remember,
For the
all
fund.
people on that committee work during the day. So
Yep.
you're giving us maybe one night to look at this before we meet on the 7th. Okay.
Okay.
Katie, go ahead.
I was just going to add that the reason that we had timed it the way that we do is in case there is any value engineering that needs to happen. If any of this is beyond what we anticipated, we're leaving ourselves some time to understand what those things would be that we might want to remove from the scope or talk about. And that's why the second NBC was scheduled. If there is any value engineering, we need to have a time to come back and say, okay, now here's your answer.
Brian Ballantyne, are you listening to this? I hate to put him on the spot, but he's got to we got to make sure this works with his schedule too.
Yes.
That you're not on vacation that week, for example, you're there.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Okay. So we
Jim?
can make, go ahead.
I would just ask that you formalize this and let's
Yep.
get tentative calendar invites on the table here. And then I think we should use the week of the 17th, obviously not the 17th itself as our emergency backup, but try to avoid that at all costs.
Okay.
But again, we have that if needed.
Okay. Yeah. After this meeting, I'll edit this and then shoot it out to the group.
So the MSBA votes on April 30th, correct? On this project?
Correct.
So they have this for 2 months before they vote?
Are we?
So that's
We're gonna get in the same situation we had with the comments and not get it back on time? Is that happening? Is that a possibility, right? Because our getting the vote to town meeting to ballot is tight, right? So if they're like, we're gonna push this to the next one, then we're running into some big issues.
What I can say is that that's the board meeting. It's not going to get to the board meeting if there's a huge issue, and that there's going to be a lot of pushback. I can say that if we're on that agenda for that meeting in April, it's I don't know how many folks chimed in or dialed into the last board meeting. So yeah, as far as the comments go, we'll have 2 weeks to get back to them on comments. But that will be before the board meeting. So
Jim, are you saying the board meeting is kind of perfunctory? If we get that far, we shouldn't worry about the board vote?
correct. Yeah.
All right. Other questions on the schedule? All right. Any other business?
Nope.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. Denise,
Aye.
Kathy,
I.
Mark,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Roger,
Aye.
and I am I as well. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks.